On July 26, 1956, Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser stepped to a microphone in Alexandria and did something that shook the world. He nationalized the Suez Canal. For nearly 90 years, the canal had been run by a British and French company. It was more than a ditch of water. It was the shortcut between Europe and Asia. More than two-thirds of the oil Europe burned flowed through it. To Britain, it was the great imperial lifeline, the route to what remained of its empire east of Suez. To France, it was a symbol of prestige and a reminder of the man who built it, Ferdinand de Lesseps. To Egypt, it was Egyptian soil and Nasser was done renting it out. London and Paris were furious. British Prime Minister Anthony Eden believed Nasser was another dictator who had to be stopped. He met secretly with the French and the Israelis. They made a plan. Israel would attack across the Sinai Peninsula on October 29, 1956. Then Britain and France would issue an ultimatum for both sides to withdraw from the Canal Zone. When Egypt refused, as expected, British and French forces would intervene to separate the combatants and retake the canal. It would look like peacekeeping. It was regime change. The plan went ahead. Israeli tanks rolled into Sinai. 2 days later, British and French bombers hit Egyptian airfields. On November 5, paratroopers dropped on Port Said and paratroopers took the bridges. The Canal Zone was under attack, but there was a problem. They had not told Washington. President Dwight D. Eisenhower was in the middle of a re-election campaign. He was also managing a crisis in Hungary, where Soviet tanks were crushing a democratic uprising. The last thing he wanted was his closest NATO allies launching a colonial war in the Middle East. To Eisenhower, Suez was not just about a canal. It was about the Cold War. If the United States backed a British and French invasion, every Arab nationalist from Cairo to Baghdad would see it as proof that the West was still an empire in disguise. The Soviets were already offering Nasser weapons and money. Moscow even hinted it might send volunteers and raised the threat of rockets. Eisenhower refused to hand the Middle East to Moscow, so Washington moved fast. On November 1st, the United States went to the United Nations and introduced a resolution demanding an immediate ceasefire and a withdrawal of all forces. The General Assembly backed it 64-5. Britain, France, and Israel voted no. They were isolated. Then came the pressure America does best. Britain's economy was vulnerable. The fighting had blocked the canal. Oil was cut off. The British pound was under attack in currency markets. Britain asked the International Monetary Fund for an emergency loan. The U.S. Treasury said no, not unless London agreed to a ceasefire. Washington also threatened to sell its holdings of British bonds, a move that could crash sterling. Eden called it America's thumb on our windpipe. It worked. On November 6, 1956, Britain and France accepted the ceasefire. Their troops would be replaced by the first United Nations Emergency Force, an idea pushed by Canadian diplomat Lester Pearson and UN Secretary-General Dag Hammarskjöld. Israel withdrew from Sinai in early 1957. The canal reopened under Egyptian control. The political fallout was immediate. Anthony Eden resigned in January, broken by the crisis. Britain and France realized they could no longer act as global powers without American support. For many historians, Suez marks the moment the British Empire ended, not with a war for independence, but with a phone call from Washington saying the money was cut off. The United States did not side with Nasser because it liked him. Eisenhower distrusted Nasser's flirtation with the Soviets, but Washington chose international law, decolonization, and its own Cold War strategy over its oldest allies. The Suez Crisis lasted only 9 days of fighting, but in those 9 days the world shifted. The age of European empires was over. The age of superpowers had begun, and the special relationship between America and Britain would never be quite the same. If this video helped you, then like the video, drop a comment, and subscribe to the channel.